All right. Welcome everyone. This is the Fifth Republic Town Hall. We're kind of zeroing in on maybe a format and how this is best useful to people. But I'd like to start these off with just doing a quick check-in, going around. You can introduce yourself as much as you want, and then I'm going to take notes on anything that people want to talk about, so we can make sure to get to those. And then otherwise, I'll just give some updates from the week. Sound good? John, you want to kick us off here?
Sure. I'm John Miller, aka Eureka John, on Twitter and Discord and everything else. Um, and met Keith at Dow Planet conference in Denver, going on at the same time as the ETH Denver conference. And then we've been working together in Journo DAO, and then I'm over here in Republic DAO. Actually had him on my morning YouTube channel one time talking about Republic and just about data and data collection and ownership of your data. And I believe it's a really important topic that needs to be addressed and given back to us to be able to control our own data. So that's why I'm here trying to see in what way I can pitch in and help out. And every little bit by everybody can create something big. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was never invited back for some reason. I don't know. Didn't really light up the charts, I guess.
Well, I got to invite myself back, actually. I'll try to do it tomorrow.
All right, Summit, you want to go next?
Hey guys, Summit here. I'm obviously very new to the Discord and only stumbled on all of this amazing work that you guys are doing very recently, but I've been avidly reading all of it. I am a full-fledged Web 2 guy, 25 years of just all Web 2, and I feel like the dog that caught the car. Like I did everything that I had set out to do literally when I graduated. So in January of 2020, I sold a company, and at that point, I ran out of plan. Like I had been on a plan for a very long time. So while I was biding my time at my acquirer, I thought about what I did want to do for the rest of my career. And it's going to sound really, really cheesy, but I wanted to use whatever skills I have to help the most number of people in the most direct way possible. My prior company was a security company, and it did what we did. That's very important in the world. But I wanted to go one step further and really do something that absolutely directly in the hands of individual users helped benefit them. I feel like I've been a beneficiary of big tech, in particular, living here in Silicon Valley for 20 plus years, working at Google early in my career. But really, that's become a little bit out of whack, out of balance. And so I tumbled to this idea of figuring out a way to participate in the area of data ownership. And the one little angle that I think I'm most interested in is how we do that at an individual and identifiable level. Because the reality is that we do use and share and benefit from our data at an individual level by name. Keith, Summit, this is my data, this is my relationship with the business. And a lot of the projects right now tend to aggregate and anonymize. And so I think those are great and those are the right things, and all these things will exist in parallel. But I am particularly interested in taking that all the way to the extreme of what can we do when we want to be known and we want another entity to know who we are and what our data is in a particular context. I'm very excited to learn from all of you. Thanks for having me.
Sounds like we're gonna learn from you as well. Do you have anything specific that you want us to cover since you're new? I know that the Republic, as we've been talking about, the Republic vision can be a little blurry, and that's something I need to work on. But anything that's confusing to you right out off the gate that I could maybe dive into first?
Well, I mean, I hate to drag everybody else through it if they've been here before, but like the 2-minute overview would be great. I've certainly been reading a lot
Okay.
on the channel, so I probably have enough context to be able to follow what you're saying now and maybe appreciate it more than just a total brand new guy. So I'm a couple hours in, but it'd be great to hear from you.
Yeah. I'll do. Javier, you feel like checking in, maybe saying anything that you want us to cover?
Well, I normally focus from day to day in data union because I'm very interested in what data union is bringing. I was Well, I'm one of the ambassadors for Swash. After that, I
Okay.
realized how big Data Union is, so I normally follow on the different Data Union pages and try to teach persons about how they can really earn and benefit from their data, because especially here in Jamaica, I don't even want to say we have reached Web 2 properly, truthfully, because of how the people are and their knowledge in tech. Because even myself, you can say currently I normally focus in cybersecurity, but otherwise from that, I love everything in Web3 and what it can bring. That's why I normally follow Republic on Twitter and kind of sometimes like to make sure share, because in Web3 community is one of the most important things that we can often help each other, and each one of us, if one grows, everyone grows. Not said. So that's why I'm here to listen in and catch up on the updates. And I have read about Republic many times before even just following them. So I'm pretty up to date on most of the names, but I just want to know what's any new update and anything like that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, thanks for joining. I've seen you on Twitter, so that's cool. Um, Emery, you in a spot where you can talk and maybe throw out anything you want to cover?
Hey guys, no, nothing specific that I want to cover, just joining for the town hall.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Emery's been on most of these town halls, and he's doing community management for the Data Union DAO. If you don't follow them, you should. Yeah, so let me start with just the 2-minute overview. I think it helps me practice. And like we were talking about last town hall, I haven't done a great job articulating like the larger vision for Republic. And I think that's kind of a tension between the short-term goals of what we're working on right now, and then like the long-term goal of like why we're doing those things now. And those things can kind of be, I don't know, very different. Like short term, we're building this mobile app and the data unions that users of the app can share data into and be compensated for. But I think long term, Republic is more of a interoperability layer with whatever new data unions or data products come out. I think this stems from a personal desire of mine to like first have all of my data within my kind of sphere of control, and then when something new comes out, like a new research study or a new rewards program or a new data union, like whatever it is, then I want to take all of my data that is relevant to that and then start participating in it, right? And the way things are now, there's a lot of silos for these different apps. Like for for automobile data, you have to like go and download this app, and it's like a whole ecosystem. And then for health data, it's like this app over here, and that's a whole ecosystem. And then within those ecosystems, there are competitors, and like everyone's trying to pull you into like their platform and this platform. And I think the UX of that is getting really thorny really quickly. There used to be like nobody in this space, and now I think we're seeing a bunch of people kind of pile in, and just everyone has their own take on it. And so my take is that I want to play with all those things, and to do that, first I need to control all the data that I might share with these apps or projects or whatever they are. And so Republic, I think, should aim to be like open source set of tools to collect all that data first, like whatever apps on your phone are collecting about you. I think Republic wants to create like a copy of all that stuff that's for you, if it's not possible to actually get upstream from all the apps that are collecting stuff. At least you can have like a mirror version of your digital self that like all these other companies have and are monetizing. And then at that point, at that point you get to problems of consent, I think, where if there's a knowledge gap, if there's an education gap, if you've collected all this data but you don't actually know what it is or understand it, and then the people who are actually monetizing it understand its dynamics way better than you do, and you're being told of like one trade-off of what it is, but actually like it's being used in all these other ways that you can't really fathom because you just don't understand like the infrastructure or the tech. And if you did understand that, maybe you wouldn't be okay with sharing it in that way. Like I think on the last call, somebody got offered like a sonic toothbrush head or something if they like shared their step data, and it's just sort of like that's where the market is at right now. And so I really want there to be a set of tools that stores your data for the long term, allows you to understand it so that you can actually give true consent to it being shared because you understand how it'll be used and like the dynamics at play. And then there's the monetization layer that's kind of like at the end of that. Once you can consent to it, then you can actually sell it. And because you've given like this high quality of consent, I think you can actually ask more on the market for that data, since I think there's going to be a lot of people just rushing to like flimsy consent to get a sale at low margins. And I think we want to create like a higher quality product if you want to think of it that way. Sorry, Emery, I see you have your hand up.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
I can't see you, but I can hear you. Sorry, I have a bit of a cold here.
You can see me now. Okay, sorry, I'm not very familiar with Zoom. Summit, I saw your message in Discord, and I think you just earlier asked about like an overall explanation of the space. Maybe I can also give that. I think there's, like I read the article yesterday, that there's about 80 companies now trying to move into this direction where you bring control and monetization back to the user, or like have them have at least a stake in that. One way of achieving that with the technologies with data unions and like the data union framework. And you also wrote that you would like to see like more applications being built. I think what Republic started as was a data union for monetizing data, but I think in the future it could definitely grow to anything if the impact is there. But then there's also other data unions that like I'm happy to share with you later. I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, let's connect. I'll send you my email in the chat.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I kind of think of like data unions as like the exciting thing that's happening now that I definitely want Republic to be a contributor to and a player in, but I also just want to keep the longer term goal in mind so that we can kind of make product decisions based on how this helps us grow into like that future, like 2 to 5 years in the future. So, and I think that longer term vision was what is missing from a lot of the website. And if you go back to some of my earlier blog posts, I feel like it's kind of in there, but I haven't really laid it out as like a vision statement, which I think is something that I should do in the short term, maybe even this week. But
yeah, I think if we have like a vision statement, we could break it down and then see and connect it with potential places of where we could apply also for like grants. I'm not sure if you had like time to look into the ocean grants, for example. If not, we could create a bounty for someone to work on it. Like as long as we delegate the task to any contributor, I think we can get there. But I just think the vision would help, at least me, to like understand in what I can help.
Hmm.
Also, so nice to see you, Javier. I don't know how to pronounce the name. I've seen you on Twitter a lot of times.
Javier.
KFC Slosh Ambassador.
Yeah.
Javier.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Summit, any questions so far? Does that make sense?
I was not able to find, I went to the onboarding section of the Discord and I didn't find a simple summary document. I might have missed it that just said how to download the app and get started. So is that something that's there or did I miss it?
If you go to the website, there's download links for Android and iOS.
Sorry,
Oh,
what's the totally new question? What's the URL?
Yeah, re-public.io.
Got it. Thank you.
How'd you find us, by the way?
I have a friend who's at Coinbase and he heard we were discussing and talking and he's like, oh, you're interested in these things. And he sent me 3 or 4 different links. So you were basically at the bottom of a rabbit hole that was 10 clicks down from an article. And I spent a day fruitlessly looking for the word republic with no hyphen. And that was a waste of time. And then somebody else that I'm working with found the hyphenated version. And that is how I found you and then got into the Discord. It was
Yeah,
literally like I heard you mentioned in the Denver like YouTube video and like
right.
transcribed the audio by hand into my browser to look for it.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I'm gonna write
yeah.
a comment on that YouTube video and then link everything. I think that's some good feedback.
That'd be good. Yeah, we've talked about the hyphen before. I hope there's like a good way that we can keep it, but there are so many like fintech, other stuff, especially like in the Web3 space that have the name, and I think they mean it in a very different way than we mean it. And I really do think of it as more like reimagining like what a public is and like what public spaces are, because I think we're gonna run into, or we are running into this idea where like everything about everyone can be known if you look hard enough. And so there's really the public private wall is being demolished, and I think we need um, hopefully something like what we're building to like reestablish that boundary and like rethink what those boundaries should be and are. But I'm open to changing the name if it's just like ungoogleable, or it's the message is kind of lost and it's just opaque and we're just having to point out re hyphen public all the time. So um,
Well, as the noob, I will say it was a little bit challenging to find, and I was pretty motivated, but I think people who might not be as motivated might give up, and we don't want to have a barrier to people finding us, right, or finding you all.
right, yeah. And I think we're still, I mean, we're kind of talking about this, we're still looking for our core team of people, and so that's not necessarily like a bad thing. Like if we were to go like super wide right now with a marketing campaign and everything, I don't think that there's like a lot. I personally don't think there's a big like value add at this point. I know there will be like shortly, but like we could scale up to like 10,000 plus users via like marketing and ads and everything, and then we would have kind of a base, like enough people to start like selling our data on marketplaces, and like that would be good. And I think we should try to do that. But I think if we're building this thing for like a 10-year run, I think focusing on that, only on that, would be a little bit like limiting. And I think if we instead of like rushing to market right now for what's happening in the space, I think we could aim to have something like really good that's better than anything anyone else has in like 2 or 3 years, while a lot of these
But
players we're coming on right now are
should we like improve the product first with like more product feedback? I think there's a lot of room for improving things and making it like a lot easier.
Mm.
we could just have some like 5 or 6 user tests and see if there's any concepts emerge. Because every time I use the Republic app, it like locks me out, for example, which is hella annoying. And I would love that to be fixed, and then I can like just be logged in the whole time.
Well, yeah, there's that too. Is just like as the sole developer trying to bootstrap
Yeah.
like the community and
Oh,
do all this stuff.
By the way, so I was talking with Marlene and 1KX about our fundraising, and I asked them if they could help other data unions with like tokenomics and things. So if Republic was ever to use token incentives, we could definitely look into doing that.
Okay, yeah. I'd like to brainstorm what tokenomics, you know, when I was first kind of getting into Web3, I was like, oh yeah, obviously we need a token and we can do all this stuff. But now like we've seen so many different models like crash and burn that seemed like probably ones that I would have chosen on or chosen on.
Don't get me wrong. I'm the last one that pushes the token too early to market. I think I'm a very big fan of keeping the token launch like a few years into the bag, like. But like at least to get there, we would also need to get some funding. And if we don't want to do the VC route, we would have to look for grants and then see if they can help us get from A to B with the amount of grants we can be getting, or like how we can use that to like drive something forward.
Yeah, I think if we had a token model that we really felt good about, that was kind of like independent of the current trends, and it just felt like it made sense to us, then we could start doing like, what are they, like safe agreements or whatever. We could actually start use a token to fundraise a little bit. But so I'm totally open to that. I just kind of want to see a few more of these experiments play out, and we can kind of take the best stuff that seems to work in other places. But I mean, the goal is, and the reason why this is all kind of like open source and intended to be like user owned and operated is, I think if you don't go that route, then you can't truly get to like universal adoption, because if there's like a kind of a middleman taking a cut, then there's always going to be somebody who like opposes that, like no matter how altruistic or caring or giving or generous that middleman seems to be. There's always going to be like a swath of people who don't like that, right? And so you'll never get their data like to mix with everyone else's, and then you're kind of, you can't do as many interesting like research studies, or you just can't know as much stuff. So I feel like it needs to be owned and governed by the people who contribute to it. So a token is kind of a necessity for that, I think, so that everyone can share in the revenue, because there needs to be like platform fees to pay the people who work on it, and there's probably going to be revenue. I don't know, something like an ENS or something like that. Is an interesting model where they have a product that just generates a lot of revenue, and then that's kind of governed by the DAO. But I think as long as we separate governance from revenue, so that you can be like a user shareholder, but then like your governance is dependent on something else, like your contributions or your engagement, or like, you know, something that's more concrete, rather than just like buying governance power on the open market. That's kind of how the playing field is looking to me right now. But I think revenue sharing via the token is like something I've always wanted to do, so that you always, like, not only are you making money from your data being monetized, but you're making money off of the platform that you partially own.
I've heard a tagline from one of my team members: "You're not the product, you're the company."
Oh yeah.
And I like that tagline. I think that that gets to the idea that you can separately monetize or separately accumulate value. One, by selling your data. Two, by participating in the system in a management role, a governing role, a contributing role, coding role, whatever role that may be. So it's two separate ways of contributing. And it really reminds me of the way early stage employees join startups. They leave their cushy Google jobs behind, take a third of the salary, and they get these worthless pieces of paper that we call stock options in the hopes that those are eventually worth something. I'm not at all in favor of speculative coins, but a utility coin, which has a clear built-in demand signal from brands and advertisers that want data, is, I think, a different flavor of token that's not flaky and not speculative.
Hmm. Yeah, when the model I'm most bullish on is actually Genome's DAO, if you have heard of them, because they have their governance token, which I think unfortunately is tradable and sellable, and there's speculation on it, which I think they just might redo that over again if they could. But then they have their gene token, which like medical researchers have to buy the gene token in order to pay people for doing queries on their genomic data. And so the buy pressure comes from like the researcher side, they have to buy the coin, and then the sell pressure is from the people receiving the coin, and then like going back to fiat or whatever they want to do. And so something like that, like you're saying, is there's like a utility to it of like measuring the value exchange on your platform rather than like, I don't know, speculating on future revenues or whatever.
How do you prevent the buying and selling of the governance token?
Well, the current plan is to use soulbound tokens, and so I'm kind of homebrewing this voting platform that other people can use too, but uh, where you have a certain emission every month of like say 1,000 tokens, and then the people who actually work on the product and the DAO and everything um, go and
Earn
yeah, earn them can claim like a certain percentage of that based on whatever metrics however you determine that. And then in order to get your tokens, you have to delegate their balance to other people in the DAO so that you don't get people just not voting on anything. Like 90% of the people, it's kind of like, and you can delegate by topic. So you can delegate to software developer or marketing people or whatever, depending on what the proposal is flagged as. And so then, you can't really do anything except for vote with those tokens. But then that enables like a quorum to be reached by like a small working groups that are all trusted to work on a certain topic, like marketing or software development. They can just autonomously make marketing decisions because between like however many people, like 2, 3, 4 people, the whole DAO is delegated to them to do marketing, so they can reach a quorum, so they can just kind of say, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing. And it's much easier to reach like consensus within that little working group.
I think that's really clever. I read that, at least parts of it, in one of your Google Docs about how to run a happy DAO or something like that. Um, One of the questions I have about that is, it seems like it might favor early participants who eventually move on with their lives, lose interest, want to go elsewhere. Uh, what happens if someone has been active for 1 or 2 years, they've accumulated quite a bit of the governance, but then they want to move on with their lives
Mhm.
for something new?
Well, I think the monthly emissions will slowly dilute it, but if that doesn't seem to dilute it fast enough, I think the multi-sig can always like burn tokens like according to a DAO vote. And so if it's like, I think you could vote to just like uh, divest somebody of their governance, but I'm hoping to just form like the base layer, and then the DAO can actually use that framework to
Sorry.
decide these things, like what should emissions be, like should we burn tokens if like the person hasn't been engaged, but you know, that sort of thing, like what classifies a stagnant contributor. And but even if they're stagnant, you know, they will have delegated, and so, you know, it might become more of an issue of the person that they're delegating to, because they can't just sit there and be inactive, right? The only inactive tokens would be the ones that nobody ever claims. They're just kind of sitting there, and those don't weigh down the pool at all. It's like only the claimed tokens that contribute to the volume. And so that's something I want to revisit. My goals are like get the next iOS app out. I'm running into like weird cert issues with Apple. I think I might need to contact their support or something. It's like it works fine, and then I go to put it on the App Store and it doesn't. And then yeah, revisiting the voting app is, I think, the next thing, just so we can start having these kind of active proposals. What's that?
Sorry, Keith. Is the voting app separate from the main Republic app, which I've just downloaded?
Yeah. So you can look at a prototype at, let me see where it is. I think if you just go to voting.republic.io with the hyphen, you can kind of mess around with it there. You can log in with your wallet, but it's all Web 2 at this point. I do have the contracts written up and ready to deploy on a test net. I'm just like trying to get the UX down and like the bugs out of it first. Sorry, I just need to blow my nose, so I'm going to disappear for a second.
What is that?
Okay.
Are you on the camera?
So I kind of talked a lot there. Any more questions about the voting or how it relates to the DAO? It's kind of I know it's weird to have like this personal data app and then this voting app, but I do feel like they're necessary, because you can't have the user owned and operated data platform without like a good governance structure. So I feel like they need to be kind of worked on in parallel, or else it's just going to be me deciding everything, and that's not really what I want. And I wouldn't want to download something and participate in something where there was just like a what do you call it, like a nice dictator. What's the word? Not beneficent.
Benign dictator.
Benevolent, benign, yeah. Benevolent
dictator.
So, you know, I want to have good answers for everyone's reservations when they come in and be like, okay, but really, what are you doing with this? Like, what's in it for you? Like, there's got to be some angle. And so that's kind of like whenever I see a new product, I just go and look for the investors to see like when they're trying to, like, everything seems great now because they just got investment money and they can say all these things, but like when investors come calling, like what are they going to have to do with the data? One thing
I
that
had
yeah, go ahead.
one quick question, because I like to read a lot of books, and I've read some books in which after a period of time, say, because Web3 is pretty new now, right? After, for example, in 5-10 years, I realized that sometimes the customers like what, for example, in 5 to 10 years, say everyone is used to Web3, right? and we're moving on to something new. What if the majority of the persons vote for, you can say, something which is new now, but you want to move over to something new because humans don't really like new things or things which they don't really understand in a sense. People like to stay to their own regular thing like that. So I want to know what if something like that eventually happen, which you want to take some huge steps, but the customer, well, the community don't agree. But they are voting.
I'm not sure I got all that. Can you kind of elaborate on the question?
All right. Say, for example, you want to put in a new. I didn't really think of something specific that could be the main issue here. All right. So what I've realized is that even in 2002, there was this storage company which had you, if you know these old-time big 14-inch. They're not SSD now. It was, I think, it was the 8 megabyte. They had a 14-inch megabyte and they had an 8-inch megabyte. Right? Most persons in the company like the 14-inch one because it's new. Well, it's not new. It's what they're used to. But then the company wanted to move to 8 megabyte, 8-inch because it's small, it's better, but the customers didn't like it. The customers said, all right, the 14-inch worked, we have no reason to move because it worked, right? And over time, that company would stick to the 14-inch data off, and only the most innovative companies actually stayed on the right path because even today, the 8-inch moved to the current 2.5 NVMe chip, which is in most laptops currently. So sometimes listening to customers or the community isn't sufficient, or most times they would like to stick to old changes. I'm not sure if you fully understand what.
Yeah, all
I
the platform shifts like over the years. How you asking how you can like keep a perpetual archive when like the data platforms are always changing.
Yeah, to help. Well, yeah, which your customers will accept.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's what I'd like to do is make kind of a portable I don't know, standard or API where as long as you adhere to it, you can like put your data, you know, it doesn't really matter what the end storage is, like whether it's, you know, on a Google Drive or Amazon, it's all end-to-end encrypted, and it's just kind of like where the data is stored. But and then Republic handles like the access and querying and like visibility layer of that data. So I think you'd want to enable your users to put it wherever they want, like if they want to, so that they can shop around for like the lowest price storage, or you know, wherever they want. And then that kind of plays into where there might be revenue opportunities as well, because like Republic could offer, you know, optimized storage to users for a fee if they want, but still let them take it wherever and just make it easy for people to choose. Yes, so it's kind of like an abstraction, I think, is what you need, where you have your data that's encrypted, you have the keys to it, but then that can really, it doesn't really matter what metal that's stored on or what format that's stored on. You probably want it stored in a few different places that are kind of like independent of each other, just to have that long-term permanence. And I think maybe the blockchain is eventually a good place to do that. But right now, I think the amount of data that we're all generating is like that's a whole technical question of how best to store it efficiently over like a decades long time frame, and like factoring in all the changes in formats and cloud providers. So and I kind of, at least at this point, I don't view Republic as like developing foundational tech necessarily, but just taking the best stuff that's out there and then making it super easy for
Like
people.
Upper.
What's that?
I was saying like Upper.
Like Upper?
Upper, APPLE.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, the Apple iPhone, the company, because they normally use tech which is in place already and then try to improve it.
Right. Yeah. And if we focus on like open source stuff, then we can like make our tweaks to it and give it back to the community without having to like drive, you know, the product of like the best, you know, encrypted storage solution.
I could almost see kind of a third party type of actor being birthed of somebody, you know, your phone collects all your data through the app. Where are you going to store it? You know, you have all these options, and a lot of people don't even, you know, some people really care about it being private. They only want to store it on their own personal device. Other people will store it, you know, on, like you said, Google Cloud or Amazon Web Services or whatever. That could birth an entirely new industry where, you know, somebody stores that data for you and then takes a cut whenever you take your data to the market, and and then says, okay, we stored your data, we'll take a percentage of that whenever you want to decide to profit off of it. So.
Yeah, I think they would be forced to like, I think market dynamics would keep those things pretty like user focused. Like, you know, you can always, as long as you can take it elsewhere, then people are going to have to compete on, you know, being the place that you'd want to store it. And so a place that's going to like take a percentage off of your cut or something is probably going to be less attractive than just like a flat rate like place that, you know, doesn't have any claim over your data. But I mean, who knows? So like from the product perspective, I kind of imagine, you know, in the app you have like your screen of different like apps that you can integrate with depending on your data. So it's like you tell the app all the data that you want to collect, and then there's like some at your, I think you're talking about Strava, and there could be just like a Strava app where, you know, you add that to your Republic, whatever it is, profile, and then you go through the authentication steps, but then like the Republic Strava integration just handles like bringing in all of your Strava data to play with all your other data from your other apps, like all in Republic. And then you have different access points to other services like storage. There's like a storage screen where you can like choose where you can see where everything's stored right now. You can choose to like, you know, store it elsewhere, but at no point does, you know, Republic ever have access. It's just kind of like, oh, and this is my wife, Jenny, who just joined the call. She has a conflict, so she can only come in at the end. But, you know, I think the Republic software never has any access to your data, right? It's just kind of like helping you move things around the way that you want them to, whether that's like choosing a storage platform or sharing it with different data unions or different projects, whether it's just bringing in all of your data from like niche devices via like a Republic SDK. I was just talking with somebody this week about a device that they're building, and it's like a wearable device, and they didn't have any idea what Republic is, or like what I was working on. And so I'm like, well, if you have your wearable device, that's going to be generating data, right? And if you only have like 1,000 people using it or something, then you're not going to spend time developing the software to actually bring that data into anywhere useful for the user. It's just kind of, it's either going to be only on your infrastructure with whatever you need to do to like make the device work with the data, or it's going to go into your servers, or however you plan it. You're not going to make it available for your users at all. So then, you know, your user could, one of your users who kind of like maybe is a developer or like knows these things, could just pull down the Republic SDK, do the integration with your device, and then any Republic user who has that device could then, you know, add that integration. And then because people are gonna have like so many different devices, right? Like hundreds probably, and everyone's gonna have like their different ecosystem of devices. And I think like an open source like SDK or API that can really take any sort of data and then pull it in for you, just like raw, and then allow you to view it, query it, and license it. I think that's the end goal in a lot of ways.
It sounds like at this point, really only a total data scientist would know how to, manage their data. Would there be some kind of dashboard that would show you what you have and where you can allocate it, and what market and what apps are actually using your data that you've allowed them to, and kind of keep track that way?
Yeah, that's where I think like the short-term value prop actually starts to materialize, is just, letting people visualize and query their data in like a pretty straightforward way. Because like collecting it is kind of like you're just telling your average user, yeah, we're collecting it now. Like, don't worry, it's under your control, but they can't really do anything. They could share it, but they probably aren't even investigating what it is that they're sharing. And so there's a pretty cool like open source platform called Metabase, I think, where you can just attach it to any database and start doing like visualizations and queries and like natural language stuff. And so I think just as like a short-term proof of concept, getting the desktop Republic app as just like a wrapper around Metabase, or like allowing people to plug in the stuff that's coming from their phone into like a Metabase interface, because it's all open source. I think that would be like a quick way to start iterating on that, is just showing people what they have. And then if you don't really want to do your own queries, you could pull in like queries that other people have run, and it's like, show me my amount of steps like mapped onto like an actual geographic map, or show me like my heart rate overlaid with my location data. Just like interesting stuff to start like poking around your own data. Are you taking off, John?
No, I was saying bye to Javier.
Oh, sorry. Javier, bye. Thanks for joining.
But I do have to leave in 7 minutes. But yeah, I just see like an entire industry that could be birthed from all this. Like this app Republic collects your data. And then now what? You have a bunch of data, and a lot of people, just the layman, just doesn't really know what to do with that. So it's an entire, I guess what we were talking about last week with this, you creating the SDK or the platform for all these apps to be built on top of it for companies or projects, saying here's what you can do with it, here's a marketplace that we built, or here's a project we built that you can plug your data into. And then, like I was saying, a dashboard that'll kind of show you where you've put all your data and the permissions you've allowed. So, and then maybe just kind of a tally of how much money you're making from it. Just kind of an ongoing incoming API stream.
Yeah, I think we're saying that data is the, I mean, tokens and finances kind of play a role in this too, but data is the connective tissue between like the network, and each individual node's like value to that network. And so I think at a basic level, Republic's just about like connecting the value back to the people who provide it. So it's like right now we have all these people providing data to all these uh, centralized nodes who are like kind of capturing all the data or all the value from that. And then Republic's goal is to just like flatten that back out to everybody. But in order to do that, you have to solve all these kind of human and technical problems, a lot of which have been solved by these centralized companies. And you just kind of have to like replicate it in an open source or an open way. And then, but some things have never had to be built because the centralized infrastructure just doesn't need it. Anything?
Hey, would anybody like to see what the Strava data looks like? Just to switch gears a little bit and get
Oh yeah, that'd
leads for a
be
minute?
awesome.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me see if I can get into presenter mode here without disclosing anything humiliating and embarrassing.
What's the fun in that? Got to give us some humiliating alpha.
There we go. Okay, so share screen. I will just share this file. Yeah, that seems safe. Oh boy, share. Okay, so you guys are now looking at a folder that is labeled Strava Data Export, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So it has lots of, this is the whole thing. You can see all the way to the bottom of the screen. And there are several folders in here that have a lot of information. So some number of runs over the past, looks like year or so, or maybe only just a month. Then there's one called activities, which is really interesting. Can you see this, or did it stop sharing?
Yeah, it opened in a different
Yeah,
screen.
let me just share my whole screen, and that way you'll just be able to see it. And now we have maximized chances of humiliation. Okay. Okay, so now you can see these are like a whole bunch of runs. I only started using Strava a couple of years ago, and it's the time, the date, the activity, how long it took, how far I ran. Quite a bit. I mean, it's a flat file, but it's got dozens and dozens of column names across the top. And I guess a lot of these things are also for additional pieces of hardware. So you could have like a heart rate monitor that would record some of these things, maybe a GPS or something that would measure grade, negative and positive grade. In some cases, it did measure the up and down hills. So even if the most basic use case I can think of for this is just that you could migrate and not be locked into one service. So you could say, hey, I want to use Runkeeper, or I want to use Apple Health, or I want to use something else, and you can migrate. So that's kind of a nice use case. I don't actually know what's in all of these different ones. I haven't been through all of them yet, but I'll click through a couple more. Not interesting there.
I like this migrate idea. I mean, not to get too TMI, but when you change period trackers, it's the same thing. You know, like you lose all that historical data,
Mm-hmm.
which is frustrating.
And also, it's good to talk about the like the data processing pipeline. Like this is kind of, you could think of it as wholesale data, which probably isn't useful to the average person. And so a lot of companies right now are trying to process the data like this into like data products to be useful to somebody, like a human just looking at it to gain insights.
Mm-hmm.
But I think most of those processors are focused on the corporate side, like corporate clients, like enterprise businesses. And I think we could be one of the few that's focused on delivering those insights just to people who just want to like, see what's going on. And I think that could be like a big value add and a necessary component for like true consent. Like if you can deliver insights to people like on a human level about, take the raw data, give them the insights that they need to make decisions about how it can be used. I don't. That's why I see a lot of people overlooking right now is, okay, that's great that you're enabling like Procter and Gamble to like understand their clients more or whatever, but you're not. Nobody's worried about making like the average person understand like what's something insightful about their everyday behavior and data that will like improve their lives or help them achieve goals, make different decisions. And so there's no money in that right now. So nobody's going after it, but I think there's lots of reasons to go after it besides money, but I think the money will come also once people understand like the value that's there.
I totally agree, Keith.
I think as long as somebody like your activities.csv file, if you wanted to upload that to the data marketplace, as long as there's some kind of app that could make that wrapper and put and encrypt your identity and then give you a DID for that, then that's the way it would be feasible, because otherwise it would still be tied back to you. And you know, through some zero knowledge proof, that data is only there, out there in the marketplace, open for people to use and buy. And then, but once it's bought, it goes back through and back to you, the money for it. It's sent back to your decentralized ID. Am I correct in all this? And how you're thinking how that would work? There'd be some kind of decentralized ID wrapper.
That's one possibility. I think Republic could even be agnostic about that and let each data project define its own like anonymization.
Yeah.
And then you can decide whether that's like enough for you. Like Republic would kind of show you that like if you share your data with this marketplace or this project, these sorts of tools will be run on it. Like either it's zero knowledge or differential privacy, or like there's a few different techniques to preserve your privacy or de-anonymize or anonymize you. And so instead of like Republic trying to find the best version of that, I think at the very least we could just surface what this is, how this is going to be used, or the processing that's going to be done on it, and then you can either take that or not. Like some people won't care, and they can share their data with like all these scammy places and they don't give a shit. But people who do care can be more selective, and then maybe their data is like of higher value on the market because of that. I don't know. I think let market dynamics kind of figure that out. I think that's where the education comes in, where Republic just needs to like fill in the gap, where it's like there's a power asymmetry with these brands and the companies building for these brands. Sorry, I know you got to go, John.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just had one more thing. Like, for instance, a woman, like Jenny had mentioned, wouldn't want all her period tracker information out there to be tied to her identity, but she could be paid for that data that she could upload, and then a company could use that for their own research. But I think that's a really important component, is to make sure that privacy is maintained. So.
Yeah.
I know we're at the end of the call, but maybe for future discussion, there are two ideas I've been circling around that pertain to the question we've been discussing. The first one is the idea of wholesale versus specific data sale. So if I said to you, hey, Keith, I have a box full of 10 computers, what are you going to give me for it? And I just certified that they're all working. You'll be like, I mean, I guess I'll give you $500, $800 a computer. But if I said, hey, John, I have a MacBook Pro in here, you'll pay me $1,800 for that. And if I say, hey, Keith, I actually have a PS3 or PS5, whatever the current one is, gaming rig, and you want that, you'll pay $900 for that. So I think that all of the conversations that I've been at least hearing so far all get to anonymized aggregated data. And I worry that that's going to cause wholesale pricing. Like there's a place for that. I mean, we want wholesale pricing for wholesale data that is anonymized. But at some point, isn't there a question or isn't there a potential opportunity to earn a lot more for users by saying, no, a particular brand wants to get permission from John Miller to know that he runs in Greater Austin, and like they're going to market to him or engage with him differentially based on that. I think that would cause the pricing in that transaction to be a lot higher. That's kind of question number one that I'd like to throw on the table for maybe future discussion if it's interesting to anybody. And question number two is the idea of queries rather than data. Everybody talks about packaging up like that folder full of data, but really there's a lot of data in there. And even Jenny's use case, there's a lot of sensitive data potentially. But do companies, do brands, do data buyers need all of the data? I mean, even if you sat on all the data, what would you do with it? It's not like you would pick through. If you're a company, just imagine being a company running your data science queries, you don't look at every single bit of it. You come up with a business purpose and a business use case. Then you write a query that says, I would like to know what 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 of my users do in a particular scenario. And ultimately, that's a query. So what if we were to enable very selective queries? And now we're not shipping off megs and megs of data that you're just lost control of. We're actually enabling safe queries.
I love that, by the way, because I mean, I love the idea of giving queries and having that place. My background, I did advertising, digital advertising, where finding out if somebody walks into the Portland Nordstrom was like huge. That's like huge if we had that information. And also, I work for a company where we have tons of information, and they've set up an amazing Tableau for us. But there's so much more that we're not even accessing because I don't know if we need it. You know, it's just too much, right? So we're only looking at things that people have requested, and then that's what we use to drive our business. So letting people add on and pay more for each query, in my mind, makes sense business-wise. Like, you always want to have the next thing for them to be getting, and not just like everything and then you choose what you want.
Well, I think that makes total sense, Jenny. It goes back to the original analogy, which is if you have to bid on a wholesale box of data and you don't know the contents of it or the people in it, are they good people? Are they your buyers? What if you're a female brand? It's a bunch of guys. Like, there's like practically no value. But if you can instead pay a small amount of money to ask a selective query, like, what's your gender? May I have permission to know what your gender is? May I have permission to know what your city is? Then all of a sudden you can say, okay, 1/10 of a unit of value for that. And then I'll throw away the 80% of the users who don't fit my criteria, and I'll go bid a full unit of value to the 20% who do. And then I'll throw away 20% of those, and I'll bid 5 units worth of value. So you can keep on walking down a tree of people who you want to connect with. But this is why I say, I think that there needs to be some, at least I'm interested in this, I don't want to derail the conversation. I think that the ultimate value extraction and creation for users eventually has to have a path that goes down to by name, because there are people that want to connect with me personally and not John, and that's okay. Somebody will bid the most for me and somebody will bid the most for John, and you can just think of my identity as the final stage of like 20 filters of criteria, like men versus women, age, old versus young, you know, ethnicity, location, you know, affluence level, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and that's what I mean when I talk about licensing, which is probably a bad way to talk about it, but in my mind, you know,